Since Mark had broken up with Emily, the house had seemed different. It was as if a shadow had fallen over our home, bringing panic to what had once been filled with light and laughter. The breakup wasn't sudden. I'd been noticing signs of deterioration in their relationship for months. Fewer visits, less laughter, a heaviness in Mark's eyes that he couldn't hide. But while I sensed it was coming, I don't think either of us were prepared for how it would affect him. Mark has always been a sensitive soul. Even as a child, he felt everything so deeply. I used to joke that he wore his heart not on his sleeve, but in his hands, wide open for all to see. So when he came home that night with a pale face and red eyes, I knew immediately what had happened. He didn't say anything at first, just slumped down on the couch, his body folding in on itself as if trying to get smaller and less visible. I sat down next to him, feeling the ache in my chest mirroring his pain. I wanted to reach out to him, to wrap my arms around him like when he was a little boy and a scraped knee seemed like the end of the world, but I knew that when it came to his heart, I had to let him come to me. "It's over," he finally whispered, staring at the TV screen even though I knew he wasn't really watching it. "I'm sorry, Mark," I said quietly. He nodded, and a single tear rolled down his cheek, which he hastily brushed away. It was hard to see him like that, broken. I wanted to take away his pain, but I also knew he needed to feel it, to let it overwhelm him before he could begin to heal. The next few days passed quietly. Mark moved around the house like a ghost. His presence was heavy and muted. He spent most of his time in his room, with the door half closed, a barrier I respected but hated. The house seemed emptier, even though he was home more often. It was as if all the life had been pumped out of him, leaving only the quiet sounds of his silent grief. Sometimes I'd hear the quiet murmur of his voice talking on the phone to a friend, or the sound of a video game, but it was always short-lived, as if he couldn't be fully engrossed in anything else. He was just there, physically present but emotionally distant. One night, about a week after the breakup, I found him in the kitchen. He was sitting at the counter, half eating a sandwich and staring off into space. I decided to join him, hoping that maybe tonight he would open up a little bit. Pouring myself a cup of tea and sitting down across from him, I asked cautiously, "Do you want to talk about it?" "I don't have anything to say," he replied in an even voice. "It just didn't work out." "I'm sorry," I repeated, knowing it wasn't enough, but still wanting to comfort him. "You really loved her." He nodded, swallowing hard, and I could see he was struggling for composure. "I did," he admitted. "I thought we were getting married, you know. We talked about it." My heart squeezed at his confession. I hadn't realized how serious things were between them. "I know," I said softly. I reached out to cover his hand with mine. He didn't pull away, but he didn't pull away either. He just sat there staring at our joined hands, as if the sight of them was too much for him to bear. After a few minutes, he took a deep breath and looked at me, his eyes full of sadness and tiredness. "It's just everything we planned, everything I thought would be in my future. It's all in the past now," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't know how to start over." I nodded, my heart breaking with pity for him. "I wish I could make things better, Mark," I said softly. "But I promise you'll find your way. You're stronger than you think." Over the next few weeks, he started spending more time with me and less time with friends or at work. It was like he was seeking my company, looking for a place where he could feel safe and understood. I didn't mind, in fact, I liked it. It had been a long time since he and I had spent so much time together, and I found myself enjoying his presence, despite the circumstances that had brought him home. In the evenings we cooked dinner together, something we hadn't done in years. He would chop vegetables and I would stir in the pot, and we would talk about anything but Emily. These moments were quiet but soothing, and they became our routine. One Saturday morning, I decided to take a walk with him in Lincoln Park. The sun was shining and the sky was bright blue. A day like that always lifted my spirits, and I hoped it would help him too. He was reluctant at first, but after a few gentle nudges, he agreed. We walked in silence for a while, hearing only the crunch of gravel underfoot and the distant laughter of children playing. I glanced at him every now and then, noting the tense lines on his young face and the sadness that still lurked in his eyes. He looked so much older than his 25 years, and it broke my heart. "I don't know what to do with myself now," he said suddenly, snapping me out of my thoughts. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I planned my whole future with her," he admitted, his voice rough. "Now I feel lost, like I don't know who I am without her." I stopped walking and turned to face him, placing my hand on his arm. "Mark, you're going to be okay," I said firmly. "You're still you, and maybe this is a chance for you to realize who you are outside of the relationship. It's going to hurt for a while, but it won't be forever." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine for something hopeful. Hope, maybe just a sign that things would get better. "What if I don't survive her?" he whispered, his voice trailing off. "You'll get over it," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "And until you do, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." He pulled me to him and hugged me so tightly I was almost out of breath. I could feel his tears on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arms around him, cuddling against him as if I could shield him from the world, from his own pain. The days slowly turned into weeks, and the heaviness in the house began to fade little by little. Mark started going out with friends again, smiling more, but he still spent a lot of time with me, and our walks became a ritual. We talked about everything and nothing, his dreams, his fears, his favorite movies from his childhood. I felt like I was getting to know him all over again, not as the little boy I'd raised, but as the man he was becoming. We also started exploring the city more. We would go to different neighborhoods in Chicago, visit museums, try new cafes, or just sit on the lake shore watching the lapping waves. One afternoon, we took a boat tour on the Chicago River, and I remember seeing a genuine smile on his face for the first time in a long time. Hope flickered in my heart. Slowly but surely, he began to find joy in the world again. One evening, we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset color the sky with pink and orange hues. Mark turned to me and said, "You know, I think I'm beginning to understand what you meant about finding yourself outside of a relationship." I smiled, feeling relief wash over me. "I'm glad, Mark. You have so much ahead of you. This is just one chapter." He nodded, staring out at the horizon. "I guess I got so caught up in what I thought my life should be that I forgot to just live it." "That's easy to do," I said softly. "But now you have a chance to write your story the way you want to." He looked at me, his eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you for being here, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "You don't need to thank me. That's what family is for. We help each other through the hard times." Slowly, I realized the time we spent together wasn't just healing him. It was healing me too. Our bond was growing deeper, and I felt like I was rediscovering myself, not just as his mother, but as someone who could still find joy, hope, and connection. It was like we were both coming out of a long winter, finding warmth and light again. One day, Mark came home with a small potted plant. "I thought we could have a garden," he said, a smile playing on his lips, "something we could take care of together." I looked at the plant, a small sprout with soft green leaves, and felt my heart race. "I think that's a wonderful idea," I said, smiling back at him. And as we found a spot for it in the backyard, I realized that, like the plant, we too are growing, slowly, steadily, reaching for the light.